Hello, I'm Milan Ślewiński and you're watching TVP World Talks, where every word matters. The European Union has approved revisions to Poland's National Recovery Plan, and we're going to examine what it actually means for the Polish economy, but also how the European Union is approaching changes which inevitably have to be confronted in the light of the ever-shifting environment. And that, in particular, applies, of course, to the economy and to the plans for the European Union's future. Now, joining us now to discuss this is Paweł Wojciechowski, former Polish finance minister. Hello and welcome to TVP World.
Nice to be here.
So let's begin with the Polish National Recovery Plan. Now, it was a big deal that the plan was unlocked a couple of months ago because it was actually generating losses for just not being there, for being held up by the dispute. But what about the revision? How important is it, and which changes would you consider to be the most significant here?
Well, let's just to make a point that a 2-year delay of having the KPO, the Polish Recovery Plan, cost a lot the Polish taxpayers. I calculated the loss, and the loss was around, for 2 years, around, for each taxpayer was around 3,200 zloty.
So how much is it more or less in euros?
So you talk about the euros. In terms of euros, about 1,000 euro was lost by each citizen of not having the plan because of the demolition of the rule of law by the previous government.
So there was this dispute with the European Union, right?
Yeah.
And, was it really, if we look at things even from a perspective of a follower of, say, the previous government, was it really worth it? Was this dispute actually worth it at all?
No,
because
definitely not. Well, the Muslims demolished the rule of law, and in addition to that, we lost because the economy was not growing at a higher pace. Lack of investments, lack of multiplier effect in the economy because of those investments. And now we have to speed up those investments. So it creates a bundle of money and change of some reform packages that was just approved by the European Commission. So we are facing, running behind all other European Union countries which receive the aid, such as countries like Italy, for example, which is the country that receives the most of RRF funds. So now we're facing, of course, the challenge to catch up and finalize the spending and finalizing reforms by 2026.
So how important are these changes? I mean, for example, concerning the vehicle tax. There were plans for this vehicle tax. Now it's not going to be there. Instead, we're going to have incentives for owners of EVs. Do you think it's going to work here? Like, which approach do you think would be preferable, really? We
are of course, adjusting this to the plan based on what is happening in geopolitics, For example, in terms of electrical vehicles, imported from China. China is producing more than twice as much electrical vehicles than Europe and the United States combined. So we are adjusting to geopolitics and to reforms which are needed, to speed up the green transition and digital transition. In the recovery plan, that was a minimum of 37% funds of investments ought to be allocated to be climate related and 20% digital related. So Poland is exceeding those benchmarks. In addition to that, we are pushing the reforms that would speed up the implementation of, I would say, the concept of recovery and building resilience in the economy.
So this resilience would also include things such as, for example, investing in solutions which are environmentally friendly, but also which allow the economy to grow instead of just, staying in the same place as it was, or just, bouncing back from the losses from the pandemic. So it's actually about bringing it forward, just, to implement targets which are more forward-looking, so to say, right?
Yeah, so it's a recovery after pandemic, but building resilience, and that includes, of course, two mega trends, which climate change and the investments in green transition and digital transition. Those transitions are the most important elements of today's economy, because without them, Poland was very much dependent on Russian gas and oil. Now Europe is withdrawing from those natural resources. Now we're moving into the green transition, not because we are so green in terms of thinking, but also because we want to have those investments in those sectors which produce cheaper electricity. Electricity in Europe is more than twice as expensive as in the United States. So we are losing, and we importing 55% of fossil fuels still. Energy, from abroad versus, for example, China is importing only 25%.
So the green transition actually is a topic that has generated some controversies. There are social groups which absolutely hate it. Farmers often go out to the streets to protest against it. On the other hand, we have challenges which have been well documented by scientists. We cannot simply just stand idle while climate change is causing damage, not just to the environment, but also in long perspective to the economy, arguably. But what do you think is going to be, the future of green transition going forward? We also see challenges such as, for example, the question of reinvigorating the defense industry in Europe. And with the looming Trump presidency just beyond the horizon, this has become something of a major issue. So do you think that Europe will be forced to scale down the green transition objectives in order to cater for other challenges which have arisen recently?
It's like we did the revision of the recovery plan. The same will happen with a Green Deal. And of course, there's no option to not to continue with the green transition, because electricity from renewable resources, solar and wind, is much cheaper than any other source of electricity, and sustainable until, of course, under the condition that we have natural resources such as critical minerals. And that's a problem, the global problem of who controls the critical minerals. That's China, and versus so all the geopolitical issues come in. For example, the issues of let's say protectionism, the issues of access to mineral resources, the issue of geopolitical tensions, especially after aggression of Russia and Ukraine. So we are all dealing with the new elements of the new economy. So we need a new paradigm for the economic growth of Europe that would be much more assertive and much more focused on overcoming some of those obstacles and some of those new challenges that emerged in the last couple of years.
So this is going to be what the plan by Mario Draghi is going to be about, but it was actually postponed. Why is that so? Do you think that it's simply because of consultations, or is it because we're actually facing a somewhat complex political calendar in the European Union as well?
Mario Draghi is one of the few, I would say, political leaders very highly esteemed, because he was the Prime Minister of Italy, and he was the head of European Central Bank, and he was credited with the fact that he saved the Eurozone. You remember the famous saying, we'll do whatever it takes. So he was commissioned by the European Commission, by President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen. She will be most probably nominated tomorrow as the new President of the European Commission. And the paper is about competitiveness of Europe and how to introduce the new concept of industrial policy vis-a-vis those mega trends that we just described. And I think, the paper was postponed because the new president would like to use the paper for the new opening, I think, if she becomes the European Commissioner, European President of the European Commission.
And to what extent do you think Europe will be able to lead the way when it comes to fighting climate change? I mean, obviously, the fact that we reduce emission, we reduce the carbon footprint, that's all fine. But what if our partners just don't do that, and especially if some of them say, oh, actually, if we don't do this, we're going to be more competitive because our economies will be cheaper to run, essentially. So, no regulations, no anything. Do you think there is a risk that Europe might actually be championing a cause which we understand is right, but some countries might just say, look, we don't care. I mean, when looking at Russia or some emerging economies, they don't have such elevated standards.
I think that we run into a misconception that the green transition is costly. Okay, it's costly, but the question
It's an
is,
investment, right?
it's an investment. It's an investment that you have to compare with the no investments, business as usual case. And if you compare the two, it means that you can clearly see that that those investments, green investments, produce great benefits for the economy. So it's not only because the special carbon tax, but because, today the production of electricity from fossil fuels, in particular coal, like Poland is very dependent on coal, it's much more costly than production of electricity from solar wind, or solar or wind. So all renewables which are available, without and those are investments which are being produced by those investments were done by the individuals, not by the state. So plus, in addition to that, you have a concept of independence of the fossil fuels, which come from certain sources, which of course have some capacity that there's some limitations, and of course some geopolitical repercussions. So if you think about the transition, you have to think about that you will have a lot of independent points,
Of course.
which are it's much more secure from the point of view of security as well. So you have a combination of a lot of things. If you're talking about green transition is good for the economy. This is
One
the
quick
main
question,
concept.
because we're unfortunately running out of time, but do you think the European Union has a strategy to sell this concept to the average citizen that might have actually come into contact with, say, some sort of anti-globalist, pamphlets saying like, the green transition is just a conspiracy, and, people thinking that, we don't really care for like the long term, we just want to have lower costs right now. And they go into this, they come into all these protests and they say the green transition is bad for us. Do you think the EU has a strategy to explain these issues in a way that
I think that you should explain
understand this
in economic terms, because it's all rate of return of investments and the future. It's not only about climate change repercussions and that the fact that we are increasing. This is about economy. This is about the economy and the competitiveness. If Europe wants to stay competitive, it's like China. It's investing a lot in solar and wind, plants. Much more than in coal mines. The same is done in the United States. So if you want to stay competitive, we have to have a green transition. In addition to that, we have to increase digital transition as well. So altogether, it's a new plan that we'll know very soon, probably in September, which will be produced by Mario Draghi, and that would be a new opening for a new paradigm of development for Europe.
So Europe essentially is rising up to the challenge related to combining economic growth, but also the protection of the environment by way, of course, of investing in what really should matter here. Professor Paweł Wojciechowski was our guest today here on TVP World. Thank you very much for joining us and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you very much.
I'm Emilia Czerwiński. You're watching TVP World. Please stay with us for more latest news and updates.